Hi, scrolling platformers that we spoke about before are one thing, but we can't forget about those flip and single screen ones either. I mean Bubble Bobble, Roadland, these games shaped entire generations of gamers. They're beloved classics, and deservedly so. That said, we're going to be looking at B-listers only today, one game per year between 1988 and 1997. So, let's jump straight in. Rad Warrior, also known as the Sacred Armor of the Anti-Riot, is a flip-screen action platformer. The world as we know it ended in 2086. Rather late, judging by what's going on in our real world, but I suppose humans of Rad Warrior were more civilized and took longer than we will to destroy themselves. Just before the end, the world was split into two factions, East and West. Surprise, surprise. Both of them having developed special anti-radiation battlesuits which, despite the naming, were actually immune to all kinds of conventional damage and not just radiation, making the traditional war smooth. So they struck at each other with weapons of global destruction. This was the end. Millennia later, the descendants of the survivors were a happy and prosperous race living in peace with nature, and everything seemed to be going the right way for once. Well, we'd had no game if something wouldn't have happened, so naturally, eventually something did. A mysterious aliens emerged from an old volcano where a pre-war, seemingly abandoned military base was. And as soon as they did, they attacked and near instantly conquered and enslaved largely agriculture and unarmed inhabitants of Earth. They forced them to work in mines and act in the benefit of invaders. You're Tal, one of the captured survivors and one that can't and won't take the oppression any longer. You were instructed by the elders to seek out a legendary battlesuit, the so-called Sacred Armor of Anti-Riot, which, as you can easily guess, is that pre-war anti-radiation suit I've mentioned, and stop the enemies from devastating the lands and killing the populace. It's not going to be as easy as it may have seemed, as the armor will require you to find few extra pieces of gear for it, but ultimately it will be worth it, as they will grant you additional abilities like beam weapon or flight, for instance. You start the game without it, armed with rocks that you can throw at the enemies, your wits and dashing good looks. I mean, people turn heads when they see you gasping in awe. The enemies are a mix of various creatures and the invaders, and while they're theoretically not very difficult to beat, I mean most of the time a rock to the eye is all that it takes, the way that the game is designed makes it much more challenging than it's necessary. What do I mean by that? Well, the rocks are always thrown at the particular angle and it's not a very well thought out one. Usually either way too high or bit too low to hit them, requiring you to perform some kind of advanced trajectory calculations on the go and setting Tal at the right distance for the throw to land where you'd hope that it would. Which is often possible, but not always, as some enemies go right at you. Still, as a DOS action game from 1988, Rad Warrior is actually pretty decent, even if very 8-bit feeling. The presentation, aside from utilizing terrible CGA, is rather decent, and all the sprites and background objects are distinct and easily recognizable. If you enjoy these old arcade titles, there's a lot to like here. Chuckie Egg is a single-screen arcade platformer that originated on ZX Spectrum in 1983. So the PC port, even if released in 1989, is rather late. If you're someone who grew up in the arcades or with 8-bit micros though, you'll find it instantly enchanting and addicting. Generally speaking, Chuckie Egg is rather simple. It's built out of 8 single-screen levels, and see you playing as Henhouse Harry, who has to collect 12 eggs in each of the stages before the time runs out. They are naturally scattered all around the henhouse, and there are hens and duck chasing you. If they catch you, you lose a life, and you only have 5 of these. Additional ones are awarded every 10,000 points that you get for collecting eggs. You can raise the scoring by grabbing piles of seed too, which also stop the timer countdown for a little while. The levels are made out of solid platforms that are connected via ladders and elevators. In the first 8 stages, only hens follow you, letting you learn the tropes and master the controls. In the second set of 8, there's the duck instead of hens, and it follows you around the screen at all times, homing onto your location like some kind of deranged natural missile. In third, they're all chasing at once. Fourth set increases the number of hens, and in fifth, duck and hens move at increased speed. When you beat them all, stages, not the animals naturally, and then the last 41st level, the game is won. Interestingly enough, the level 41 is identical to 33, which is odd, but whatever. It may not sound like fun from this rather dry description, but trust me, if you yourself was spawned into existence in the 80s, or have an unhealthy love for the games from the decade, this one's as good as they come. And we'll see you running around the hen houses like crazy, grabbing the eggs, no doubt in preparation for the Guinness Book of World Records' biggest scrambled eggs cook-off record attempt. And that needs a lot of eggs. Like at least 492 eggs. I mean, don't fact check that, trust me, I wouldn't lie to you. On a video at least. Dangerous Dave in the Deserted Pirates Hideout is one of John Romero's first games, way before he became famous as one of id Software's legendary designers and a first game in Dangerous Dave series. I'm sure it's pretty easy to guess that you play as Dave, and he's dangerous. Well, mainly to himself, slipping off the platforms to his demise whenever he gets a chance, but whatever, it comes to. Dave's also a master skateboarder, a legendary skater or whatever you'd call a person like that. I was never much into the subculture, and it's difficult for me to dress my thoughts in words with this one, being a foreigner and all. You know, the point is he has a skateboard, and he's so good at it in fact, that he managed to earn 10 golden trophies in various tournaments. So you know, he's like young and much cooler Tony Hawk, also known as Dangerous Hawk. Or not, it's hard to follow all these folks with their cool sounding names. Anyway, your arch-nemesis, Clyde Cooper, a much less cooler named kid, stole your trophies and scattered them around the pirates' hideout. I know what you're thinking, how in the hell a young teen would know pirates, let alone where their secret hideout is. But that, my dear viewer, is really easy to explain. And please, let me shed some light on it. The reason for it all is, you guessed it right, game logic. Anyway, Dangerous Dave plays a little bit like Super Mario games do, short of scrolling, which flicks the screen back and forth as you get close to its border. So, you run around the mostly horizontally arranged stages, avoiding various baddies and seeking trophies, collecting numerous treasures along the way. While these do nothing in terms of level progression, they award points, and every 20,000 you get an additional life, and there's no such thing as too many lives in an action platformer, even one that caps them at 4 like Dave does. Unlike Mario though, you're armed with a gun and some enemies shoot too. But most importantly, you're not going left to right, but can backtrack if needed, as the level exits are often somewhere in the middle of the stage. But since they open only after you collect the trophy, some backtracking may be needed here. Come to think of it, it doesn't play like Mario at all. Whatever. Some bonuses and trophies may be stashed high up, much higher than you could ever jump to, so finding and using a limited in fuel jetpack may be required to beat some of the stages. So keep that in mind, that having a little jetpack fuel left, just in case, is always a good call. Similarly to Mario though, Dave features some hidden levels, and discovering them is as rewarding as it was finding them in Nintendo's Classic. Overall, while not as polished as some later games in this video, Dangerous Dave is definitely one well worth a playthrough. To no one's surprise, being the 4th game in this genre-themed video, Prehistorik is a flip-screen platformer, and as the title may suggest, it takes place in the prehistoric times, somewhere between the first and last dinosaurs. You play as a generic type of a caveman, one hailing from a T-bone tribe no less. You know, like the steak, but from a dino and not a cow. Genesis of the tribe's naming aside, you have a problem. I mean, not you, but tribe you. What is it, you may wonder? Well, the times are tough, the food is scarce, and T-bones are in dire need of some real-life T-bones. So, being the stand-up caveman that you are, an upright Homo sapiens joke intended, and also having nothing better to do, you grab your trusty club and head off to hunt for food. Some of the foods can be found and picked up, you know, fruit, berries, an odd chicken leg and the likes, but let's be honest with ourselves here. When you're hungry, you want fresh meats. All kinds of meats. Light, dark, fatty, lean, you don't discriminate. Steaks, burgers, sausages, bacon, you know, the good stuff. Meat is something very rarely lying around though, and you gotta hunt for it. So, bash them animals that you'll meet with your club to completion. Whoa, that sounds all kinds of wrong. Anyway, no subtext intended, the more you bash, the more meat you get, and the more food you're able to collect. That said, animals are not just waiting there to be beaten and then devoured, and they defend themselves. And while some attack you at melee range, trying to get that bite or scratch in, naturally to change your mind and explain the many reasons to go vegan, there are those that throw the projectiles too, explaining vegan philosophies from afar. Those attacks and reasoning fall on deaf ears though, and you're all about the meat. And I totally get that, because my favorite sandwich is BLT, hold the L and hold the T. Prehistorik is a rather interesting title, though an unforgiving one. Most of the jumps that you'll be taking need to be pixel perfectly aimed, the enemies often attack so fast, especially when entering caverns, that you're left with what feels like a fraction of a second to react. So you always have to be at your A-game not to keep dying left and right. Other than the club, you'll get to find bombs, extra lives and time, improved jumps, and better weapons. And while they're all fantastic, especially the jump, trust me, you'll love it when you get it, the weapons don't persist between the levels, which is just all kinds of nasty video game design choice. But it is what it is. And what Prehistorik is a rather fun and unique action platformer that's as entertaining as it's frustrating to play, so a mixed bag. Elf is a flip-screen platformer with some adventuring elements. You play as Cornelius the Elf, I know, it sounds rather generic, but you're anything but. And you must save your beloved Eliza, that had been kidnapped by the Met Necrolius, and conveniently for him, and us gamers too for that matter, she's been hidden by him 8 worlds away. You know, so you'd had a long-ass adventure cut out for you, before you get to them. So, with nothing more than your magical ring capable of shooting projectiles and your dashing good looks, you set off to save Eliza. As you chase the evil madman around the game's world, annihilating any and all creatures that, for whatever the reason, seem to be bent on hurting you, pewing your way through them to your ultimate goal, you'll collect various herbs and small animals that then you can later on trade in shops for different useful upgrades, like extra speed, stronger attacks, magic spells, or unique devices helping you on your quest. One of them being a flying machine, for instance. You'll also meet plenty of NPCs that will be more than happy to send you on numerous errands around the game world, and it will mostly be different manner of fetch quests, kinda similar to those we'd seen in earlier DZ games. Were these really necessary in a game like Elf? Nope, not at all, but they're definitely a nice addition and make it more interesting and unique as compared to other titles in the genre. Oh, how you treat those NPCs, so whether you help them or hurt them, is kinda logged by the game and kept underneath all the gameplay as a sorta invisible karma meter, and depending whether you were good or bad throughout the game, the ending changes. So you know, it's an interesting mechanic and one that makes Elf more replayable than other games are. Elf is unusual and a game that grows on you, meaning that when you first play it, it may seem much less fun than it actually can be, as it demands a little time investment and patience to let it find its way into your heart. If you give it time though, it may end up being something you'll actually enjoy completing. Jetpack Christmas Special is a single-screen arcade platformer and a special freeware version of its bigger sibling Jetpack. You could think of this Xmas version and the original alike as a new take on the classic load runner formula. So, the levels are always of a single screen in size and require you to collect all presents controlling Santa before the door to the next stage opens, and you have to do it avoiding obstacles and the enemies. These enemies are not just monks like in famous classic, well, not at all like monks actually, but come in various shapes and sizes, and most importantly behavioral patterns. Some will chase you blindly as you're used to, while others move randomly in predefined locations. And there are those too that are scripted to move continuously or even just once over a particular path, which may require working around and / performing Indiana Jones-like boulder escapes. So you know, fun. The difficulty level grows steadily, and while the first few levels may not be too demanding, the challenge grows with your progression, and soon enough you'll find yourself sweating working out ways to complete some of these more punishing stages. Fortunately, your character, let's call him Nicholas Klaus, has a jetpack and a so-called phase shifter. And while the first requires no explanation and is just precisely what it sounds like, the second allows you to tunnel through certain walls, which will come in handy more than once, for puzzling or to escape from a near certain death. Other than the platforms and Christmas presents, there are also ladders, force fields, jagged rocks, ice surfaces, teleport paths, conveyor belts, and a whole manner of other features that will help or impede your progress considerably. Cause yeah, a conveyor belt may very well be a huge help, as it can be an annoyance. Jetpack runs on fuel, so keeping a steady supply will require you to pick up tanks of it, but if I'm to be honest, more often than not, they're on your way to somewhere else anyway, so it's hardly ever going to be requiring you to do a lot of extra legwork to get there. Jetpack Christmas Special, same as the original Jetpack, comes with a built-in level editor, which can extend its life by a lot and allows up to 8 players to experience it alternating on a single system. If you don't mind a little bit expanded but still an 8-bit design formula in your games, then Jetpack Christmas Special is as good as they come. Blackthorne is a side-view action platformer that's very similar in its underlying gameplay mechanics to Flashback, but focused more on fun and bloody combat rather than story and puzzling. And since we're on the subject of story, you play as Kyle Blackthorne, an ass-kicking bad mofo that's afraid of nothing and no one. Now, cause 20 years earlier, as you were just a small kid, your father, King Vlaros Blackthorne, sent you off the planet Tool to Earth to stay in hiding. And you did, as you were afraid of everything, even the sound candy bar rappers make. Why would your father do that though? Well, evil forces of Sarlacc were taking over the planet Tool, and there was nothing that your father could do other than saving you. Since you grew up on Earth, and in one of those capital of violent crime cities no less, you've been trained, nay, seasoned by life to deal with whatever it throws your way. So, being a grown-up tough daddy now, you packed up your favorite shotgun, gave the last kiss to your best girl, put on your best heavy boots and your whitest of white t-shirts, and head off home, real home, Tool, to retake it. You may be under impression that one double-barrel shotgun and a t-shirt is not much, but Kyle is a one-man army, and way more dangerous than anything Sarlacc could throw his way, even when armed with just a t-shirt. Also, getting married to the idea of going through your adventure with just these two is a mistake, as soon enough you'll come across other weapons and some random items that will come in handy in this quest, one way or another. So, you'll be fighting off hordes of evil aliens, saving hostages, and solving simple puzzles. As a side note, you can also shoot hostages, cause they're chained to the walls and can't do nothing about it, but you and you don't hurt the innocent, even if you can. I really like the cover mechanic in Blackthorne, as it allows both you and the enemies to hide in the background layer to avoid getting shot. It introduces a lot tactics to the otherwise simple shooting gameplay and makes it feel deeper than your typical run and gunners are. Slower, more methodical, but also more fun. The game's rather gory, so I obviously loved it back in the day. But the fact that it ran really well, looked great and played awesome added a lot to the fun factor too. Somehow, Blackthorne never reached the heights of popularity of Prince of Persia or Flashback, even though it should. As for me at least, it always felt more engaging and action-packed than they were. If you've never had a chance to experience it, this one's a no-brainer and a lot of fun. Track it down, load it up and get lost in hours of cool alien blasting. Cold Dreams is a rather fun and often overlooked flip-screen action platformer that features some of the most fun in its subgenre puzzles. According to its story, it's also a Predator-like scenario, like the 1980s movie Predator that saw an alien creature come to Earth to hunt humans for prey, just to get its ass handled to it by the mountain of muscles, Arnie Schwarzenegger himself. Well, it may not be the exact way the movie told its story, but for the sake of this video, let's assume that it did. So, Cold Dreams is the opposite scenario, as in, a humanoid warrior travels to a distant red planet going by the name of Swanda to prove his skills and prowess as a fearless warrior. The planet is said to have a legendary underground maze of caverns, defended by an army worth of monsters and holding tons of treasures and secrets just waiting there to be discovered. That maze is where you're going. It's worth pointing out that so far, all that went to the planet to prove their strength and honor had stayed there and never came back. Not living in peace and harmony with nature though, but as corpses rotting away somewhere. Which could be argued is also in peace and harmony with nature, so... Anyway, the planet split into 3 subworlds, each composed out of numerous rooms. While you go through them avoiding numerous hazards and battling it out with the enemies, you'll also have to do a lot of puzzling. And while most of it is traditional for the genre key finding, there's quite a few different and unique ones. Like for instance, cutting down the tree on one screen so that it could fall down few screens down and form a natural bridge over an unusually long gap. You also get to employ help from small robotic companion at some point, which can be set to follow you, wait or be controlled remotely. And given his size, he'll be more than useful in some of the puzzles and to get to hard to reach places. It can be equipped with ammo to protect itself when you're controlling it and can go into unreachable areas. Other than all that, there are naturally various pickups in the game, so stuff like life boosters, bombs and shields for instance, and all these can be carried and used at will or when necessary. There's 5 different weapons in Cold Dreams 2, and they are more or less useful against particular kinds of enemies, so learning what works where is a must for a comfortable and low on devs gameplay. These weapons are often used in puzzling too, so that tree I told you about for instance, the one that would be used to quote-unquote build a bridge, can only be cut with the use of an axe. Now, by 1995, flip-screen platformers were a dying breed. There weren't many of these on the market and they were of very different and not always great quality. Fortunately, Cold Dreams is rather good, so if you enjoy your Metroidvanias with a sci-fi twist, it's an excellent title to waste some time on. Quadrax is a Slovak single-screen puzzle platformer that was huge in the country of its origin, but virtually unknown anywhere else, which is surprising as it's excellent. The story bit is rather simple and lacks detail, but fortunately it more than makes up for it with gameplay. So there's these 2 adventurers who went on a treasure hunting and found an ancient temple, like as old as the oldest of old structures that still remain hidden in the dense Amazon jungle. You know, those old pyramids partially reclaimed by nature? That old. Now, to be clear, it's not stated anywhere that Quadrax is set in the Amazon. In fact, it's seemingly in Africa. I was just using it as an example. The temple is hard to place location-wise as the themes of its rooms change often, but let's assume that some ancient civilization that was very advanced and now is long gone left it in the jungle, be it Amazon or in Africa. And these 2 are all about the treasures. Now, to get through all 100 levels Quadrax is composed of and succeed, you'll need to be on your puzzling A-game most of the time, as some of these later stages will really tickle that brainstem of yours. I'm not saying that they're needlessly toying with your sanity being overly difficult for no reason, I'm saying that they get gradually more demanding and can really get your noggin going, thinking of order of actions to perform and what to do to complete them. They're good tough, and not annoying tough is what I'm saying. The levels are naturally filled with all manner of traps and obstacles that have to be navigated around, and tons upon tons of things to switch, items to move, turn on or off, elevators, teleports, different kinds of blocks to interact with, you know, your typical puzzle fare. And you can control both adventurers separately, but at the same time switching between them at will to perform various tasks all around the levels. If you've played The Lost Vikings, you know exactly what I mean, with the difference that they don't have any special skills and are only often required to be at 2 different locations at the same time doing different things. Now, how many times did I say different in one sentence again? Too many seems to me. We should make out a drinking game out of it. So, whenever I say titular, you take a sip. When I say different or various, you take 2, but if you hear me say excellent, now that's at least 3. Also, I'm in no way trying to influence your decisions here, not advocating alcohol consumption either, it was just a silly joke. Oh, YouTube gods, please forgive me for I have misspoken. Anyway, where were we? Quadrax. So, there's no time limit in any of the stages, but the abundance of dangers, traps or great heights to fall from can kill you. Luckily, there's no enemies, so the game is really all about figuring out solutions to more and more demanding puzzles. If you like those kinds of experiences, this one's excellent. I've said it, I did, you know what to do, and it looks pretty darn good too. Not great, nowhere near what our PCs were capable of in 1996, but decent enough not to detract from play. Sounds are nearly non-existent, so there's that. One bad thing in a sea of good. Check it out, it's worth it. You know how I sometimes leave best for last? To end the episode on a high note with a hidden gem type of a game? Or something that has unusual or interesting gameplay mechanic? Or a particularly great written game worth experiencing? Well, in a video like this one, where I show a B-lister games and one for each year, it would be difficult, especially in our topical genre. So, I give you the worst for last. And while the worst for last is often overlooked and considered to be the lesser of 2 choices, I feel that just because the game is not particularly great doesn't mean that it's not interesting or worth seeing. And our today's pick, B.I.G, or B.I.G, definitely is. B.I.G is a very late Polish flip-screen action platformer that looks like it really wanted to be the next Flashback. It did a lot to fill in the shoes, but something went wrong along the way and it failed to land. Instead, it circled around the airport for hours and touched the ground in an emergency landing, losing both wings, undercarriage and one engine in the process. On the surface, B.I.G has it all. Your character can walk, run, crouch, jump, use melee and ranged weapons and even crawl. He can tiptoe his way around the levels too, not that you'd even need to, but you can. There's 8 types of weapons in B.I.G and they're all manner of instrument of destruction, from sword to bazooka and anything in between. Was such a variety needed? Not really, but it's a nice touch. The game features other useful items too, so a magnetic belt extending your jump length, masking field, which is just your portable camouflage module, time accelerator, exactly what it says on the tin, and energy shield, so a personal shielding unit. You know, to tank those enemy shots with it and not your guts. The enemies are quite varied as well, different humans sporting different weapons and few types of robots too, all of them sharing the same motivation though, to express you away from this existence into the realm of the dead so that you would not have to suffer too long playing this game. Other than all that, there's a whole set of traditional adventuring and puzzling elements, so conversations with NPCs, switches, levers, computer terminals, elevators, teleports and magnetic cards, and you'll be either seeking or using this all the time. Graphics are a mixed bag of average and not great, for 1997 at least, and more often than not they feel like a miss. Using digitized characters on badly drawn backgrounds is rarely a recipe for success. And yet, that's what the devs banked on. Some foreground and background objects look out of place, but all of it, even while not great, is not terrible, and the character animations are actually pretty darn good. I mean, not AAA good, but comparable to those in aforementioned Flashback. Story is just the most ridiculous B-movie type of a tale that you've heard, which means that to me it's fantastic. It's short, it's simple, and sets up the game just fine. A group of crazed terrorists called Apocalypse attacked a convoy carrying nuclear warheads, stole them, and now plan to use them to initiate a global and potentially world-ending conflict. To prevent the extermination of the human race, the president sends his best agent, you, straight into the heart of the enemy's base in a foreign country to get to the warhead storage facility and initiate their self-destruction protocol. So, effectively, to potentially kill or irradiate millions to prevent the deaths of billions. Morality of such choice is an interesting subject to ponder about. Now, I'm sure that by now you've pretty clear idea what makes B.I.G a rather bad game. The video recording shows me failing time after time again in going through the first part of the first stage. The controls are a nightmare, the gameplay lacks direction and clear objectives, and the responsiveness is just atrocious. I gave it a good half an hour, never having played it before, and all I did is die, and die. And then I died some more and even more. I kept dying everywhere. Well, on these 2 free screens that is, I never got any further. And you know what? It doesn't get better. B.I.G doesn't deliver what it said to deliver and feels flat and uninspired. Avoid it if you can. Pretty fun list, right? Who would have thought that a single and flip screen platformers would hold up for so long? I mean, scrolling was a natural progression for the genre, and yet flips and static ones prevailed. And were actually really cool. Most of them at least. What do you think of them though? Let me know in the comments below. If you liked the video, hit those like and subscribe buttons below, and maybe share it too, it helps more than you know. If you didn't, then don't naturally. It was fun talking to you as usual, and I'll see you, or more accurately, talk to you very soon.